In this section, we're going to look at both livestock and fishing in regards to agricultural growth. In the area of meat production, the growth has been very steady, and in some countries it's been exponential growth in terms of the production and per capita consumption of meat products. When we refer to meat products, we're referring to anything that would be a meat or animal product as well. So we're not just talking about beef, chicken, veal, any in other countries, sheep and goats that they might eat. But we're also talking about the eggs that come from the chickens. We're talking about the milk that comes from the beef and goats, etc., and the cheeses as well. What's a quite surprising statistic is that beef, poultry, and pork consumption has more than doubled in the last 40 or so years. And when we think about the population of the earth as being 7 billion, keep in mind there are 56 billion animals are raised and slaughtered each year for food. One of the key contributors to this increased use of meat per capita is with affluence. And countries like China and India, not so much India because of their religious beliefs, but China particularly, there's more and more desire for meat and animal products as they've gained influence. This is a map of the world, and you can see the countries that have the highest meat consumption per capita, and they include the United States. This is kilograms per person per year, and U.S. and Australia kind of lead the way there, but lots of places in South America. But they're getting to be more and more, if we look at China, that their meat consumption has definitely grown over the last several years as well. Another chart that shows that per capita meat consumption just increasing, this blue line is showing the increase in China, and from 1961 where you see just 20, I think this is kilograms per capita, all the way up to 120. Now, the United States has always been fairly high, but we've been a developed country for quite a long time, and other countries as well, places like Brazil and Spain also increasing their meat consumption. When it comes to animal farming, we have to keep in mind, well, what do we feed these animals as well? So more than 50% of the world's cropland is used to produce food for animals. In the U.S., that's 70% of all of our grain actually has gone to feed animals. I have to double check that stat, but it is a high amount compared to overall amounts. We do lose a lot of topsoil from grazing practices, and I would say that's probably a little bit more in other countries rather than the U.S. We need a lot of water, and we talked about that in our water unit, about the water that is needed for livestock production. Cattle produce lots of methane. They burp and belch and other things, and that's methane gas that's produced when they do that. They produce a lot of waste. The animal waste is just a tremendous amount. Any large farm of any size has to have some sort of system in place to deal with the waste, and usually that might involve cleaners and scrapers that keep the pens and areas clean. And then they have to do something with it, either storage tanks where it is stored until they decide to use it as a fertilizer or perhaps sell it to something else. Some of the more advanced farms might actually turn that into an energy source, believe it or not. But because of this, we've talked about the trophic levels. We're going to lose a lot of energy as we go up through these various points in the food chain. In industrial livestock, the major concern for a lot of people are the concentrated animal feeding operations called CAFOs, and you saw a couple of those in the video we saw in class. Here, the animals, large number of animals in a small amount of space. The goal is to feed them and get them as large as possible in the shortest amount of time so they are ready to be slaughtered and turned into meat for those of us who eat meat. So usually it's a mixture of grain, fish meal, things like that. This is where they could potentially add growth hormones, and very often antibiotics are added in the CAFOs because you have such a large number of animals in a small concentrated area that if there's any disease at all, it's going to run rampant through the CAFO, and suddenly you're left without any animals at all. Some of the benefits to livestock, industrial livestock production, it has definitely increased our meat supplies. We would not be able to, I doubt that we would be able to sustain our level of meat consumption without that process, or at least not for the price that most people would want to pay. It reduces overgrazing to, if we had all of those farm animals, the cows, pigs, etc., on areas of land instead of in the CAFO, that would likely produce some overgrazing, then erosion, soil erosion issues. It's definitely lowered our food prices. If you think about the cost of a pound of meat or chicken or poultry, it's a definite advantage to the consumer, and it's also higher profits for the company. So it's a very efficient system. Some of the consequences, though, again, it does use a large amount of fossil fuels and water, transportation for the cattle's, water that's used there. The animal waste that's produced in those areas could pollute local water sources. When we do have maybe not so much industrial agriculture, but having to clear forest for rangelands and degradation of soil from overgrazing. Again, that methane gas is a more toxic greenhouse gas than even CO2. And I think a lot of people's major concern with the feedlot operations is the increased use of antibiotics, and that's creating the increased resistance of antibiotics in humans as well. Another area that we often don't think of when it comes to agriculture and food is the area of fishing. And we basically get our fish from two different areas. One is from fisheries, which are really just in the ocean or lakes, etc., where there's a concentration of some species that's suitable for harvesting. So there's enough in the natural ecosystem that we can just harvest them, fish them, through different processes, either through nets or lines, etc., and have those for harvest. But a huge growing business has been aquaculture, where there are marines and freshwater fish in ponds or cages, and they're grown exclusively for human consumption. And actually 50%, and that number is definitely on the rise, of our fish come from aquaculture. And you can see really this is a graph that's just showing from, before 1970, this was really not much of a business whatsoever. And now we have, a larger and larger share growing just really since, 1990, 2000, and increasing substantially the amount of aquaculture versus the wild-caught capture. And if you take any trip to Giant Eagle or another grocery store that sells fish, they do have to mark on that in the U.S. Where it was from, and you'll see more and more often you're going to see that it says farm raised, and that would be those that are done by aquaculture versus wild caught, which would be wild capture in a natural setting. Some refer to this recent change with the aquaculture as the blue revolution as opposed to the green revolution with crops. So it is basically fish farming. If it's a freshwater fish, you might have a lake or a reservoir, rice paddy, something like that. If it's a saltwater, you might actually build like a netted area offshore, or actually sometimes just simulate the saltwater environment somewhere. You basically grow the fish, you feed them, and again, some of the concerns with that is they're not being fed their normal diet, but they're being fed whatever will make them grow the fastest. So, get them as large as you can, as quickly as you can, so that they're ready for harvest, and that's going to make it a more profitable situation. China has really been a big player in this, where they have 70% of all the farmed fish. And this includes not just fish, but it also includes things like crabs and clams and those sort of products as well. India and Indonesia also high up there with about 12%. This sort of began way back in the early 70s with the just plant-eating fish, but we've changed this to a little bit more of a meat-eating fish. So, what do you feed the diet of a meat-eating fish when it's in a cage? So actually some of our global wild-caught fish are actually used to feed the farm-raised fish and also livestock as well. But those fish are also fed corn products and other things just to fatten them up as quickly as possible. Some of the advantages of aquaculture, again, it's very highly efficient. You get a high yield. There is a benefit that the overharvesting of fisheries is reduced. Some areas in the Atlantic and Pacific, we've just completely wiped out some of the native fish populations. Low amount of fuel use because everything is right there, and again, high profits. So a lot of great advantages to aquaculture. But the disadvantages are you might have to reserve a plot of land or water, the feed. What do you do with the waste that's there? If you remember, that's actually the one way that those Asian carp became an invasive species in some of our U.S. waters, that the Asian carp were brought in to kind of be a natural cleansing agent for aquaculture for catfish. And then those Asian carp escaped from that area and then became an invasive species that we're having to deal with on a bigger and bigger basis each year. Sometimes a convenient place for this is on estuaries and mangrove forests. We're losing some of that diversity. Again, they're fed with grain or oil. And again, once you have a large population in a small place, then you're vulnerable to disease as well. These two charts are showing how many fish are actually caught, and you can see that our fish production has also increased from 1950 to 89. The catch was a five-fold increase, mostly in the marine catch. That has pretty much leveled off since 1990. If you look at this graph right here, you can see that that actually has decreased the amount there, but the world fish catch per person kind of on a steady increase there as well. So are we causing overfishing? I would say for the quick answer is yes. Fish are a renewable resource as long as we leave enough fish in place to have a sustainable yield. If we prolong our overfishing, then we end up with extinction and there's not enough fish available to make a profit. Many of our major fisheries, and these are different regions in the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans and our coastal waterways, have been fished at or above our sustainable yield since 1993. Many of these have been just depleted and overexploited. So that's one reason for an increase in aquaculture, is because we have overexploited the natural areas and there are just not enough fish in those regions for the demands on the fishing industry. A real good website, I'm going to let you just go to it on your own, is National Geographic has put together a seafood decision guide. We might be talking about this in class this week as well. And it has listed, you can click on your choice of fish, salmon, cod, haddock, whatever it might be, shrimp, and it will tell you, is this a sustainable fish? Is this one that's overfished? Are there other health issues with it? Is it high in mercury? Is it one that's typically aquaculture, or is it wild caught? So it's a good resource to see if you want to change your diet in regards to fish and what you eat, which one is the best sustainable, environmentally friendly choice. That concludes this lesson. We'll turn next to agricultural policy and food aid.